Minister and the team from the Department of Social Development. Welcome to the meeting. Is the Minister in?
Good morning, Chair. My name is Linton Nkuno. I'm acting DG at Social Development. I just want to render an apology for the Minister. She was under the impression the meeting would start at 9:30. She is unfortunately not with us, but she will join us towards the latter part of the meeting. She's Minister in attendance at the state visit currently underway with the President of Finland and our President. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, no, thanks a lot. The Minister never disappoints us. So is the DM is also not in the meeting?
Yes, Chair, we are checking with the DM. I know she's supposed to have joined us, but we're checking with her in terms of her availability, and we will revert as soon as possible.
Yeah.
Okay, so you will open the meeting and make the presentation.
That's correct, Honorable Chair.
Okay, no, thanks. That is it's understood. All members, as you can hear, the Minister is going to join us a bit later. My phone is not very happy today, but I think it's I'm coping with this. Here's the agenda, honorable members, for the meeting. Any additions, members that'd like to make additions on this agenda? If there's none, is there any mover for adoption of this agenda?
I move for the adoption, Chair. It's Nkosi.
Nkosi moves. Any seconder?
Luthuli seconds, Chairperson, and greetings.
Mazandona, welcome. Thanks. Okay, so this is our agenda. As you can see, our time, it's we really stretch the time. We're going to give the department an hour to brief us on their annual plans, performance plan, and their budget for 2023-2024. This is the plan that was made by the department based on their mandate and their vision, and what seriously things that they want to achieve in this financial year 2023-2024 will be presented today. And we're giving you an hour, then we'll have an hour deliberations, and then we'll have on the agenda a close meeting of the committee, our own annual performance plan as the committee. But by that time we'll have released the department so that we can deal with matters, our matters in-house. DG, there's no need to introduce your team. We're not meeting for the first time today. Let me give over to you to take us through your plans for this year, 2023-2024, and then the budget. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair, and a very good morning to honorable members. Indeed, we have met before on this platform. Thank you for the opportunity. We always appreciate the time given to us to be able to talk to you around our plans. And of course, I am not alone. I'm supported by my colleagues who are DDGs responsible for the various programs here, including our chief directors, who are also with us, and some of the other colleagues from various units. We've also asked Honorable Chair, the CEO of SASSA and the National Development Agency, which is our agencies as a department, to join us. In the event there are any specific questions related to the National Development Agency, as well as questions related to the South African Social Security Agency, SASSA, Thank you once again. As indicated, the Minister will join us a little bit later. We're trying to reach out to the Deputy Minister and with the hope that she would also be able to join in. Our presentation this morning, Honorable Chair, will really touch on two things. One, as you indicated, the plans for the 2023-2024 financial year. And we know that 23-24 is the last year of the sixth administration. We are therefore going to be consolidating aspects of the MTSF through its final stages now in terms of the annual performance plan. I'm already on the contextual analysis. The second part which we'll do, of course, is the budget implications in terms of the budget vote. We'll talk to that towards the end of the presentation. But we'll also make a few recommendations. Now, Chair, you may let me apologize upfront for the fact that there are a few things that we realized are not necessarily embedded in the presentation, which we'd like to talk to. And that really goes into a little bit of detail, particularly aspects around the budget vote. Some aspects, I think aspects around the budget are adequately covered. But we will talk a little bit to some of those things that may not necessarily be in the notes. We will try and make sure that we infuse them into, I suppose, an amended piece of presentation that we could share. But it's not really much. It's really few things. I must just also indicate, Chair, that our presentation takes into consideration aspects that have been raised by this committee in the previous year when we presented our current or previous financial year 2022-2023 annual performance plan, including our annual report, by the way, of the 2021-2022 financial years. So we've infused the guidance that we've received from honorable members in this committee. We've also made sure that we build on aspects related to the committee, like, for example, the Appropriations Committee, which provides guidance from an appropriations point of view, but also guidance from our Portfolio Committee on social development, which essentially touches on the BRRR recommendations. And so we've infused that into this sort of presentation. So if we go to the first slide, as I indicated, we are marking the last year of the sixth administration, including the MTSF. And so we have to make sure that everything that we have committed to in the MTSF is achieved in this financial year. And so we'll talk about that and give you a sense of what those issues are. But I thought it's also important to highlight to honorable members that it actually marks 7 years before the NDP comes to its conclusion, 2030. And therefore, that means that in this financial year, we have to conclude the aspects of the MTSF, and then we are left with just 6 years after that in the next year to really meet the aspirations of the National Development Plan, which is, of course, our guiding tool. Of course, this particular presentation is also inclusive of the various priorities that President Ramaphosa spoke about in his recent State of the Nation address. And I suppose those 6 priorities, 3 in particular, really talk to us, particularly creating safer communities or making communities safer, aspects around economic, growing the economy and jobs, and of course, building better lives. Those resonate within the work of the Department of Social Development and really speak to the issues that we will talk about. Now, I just also want to highlight that, as I indicated, we are consolidating in this year. And so the aspects that we may not have met in the previous 4 years are going to be culminated and sort of concluded in the current year. Of course, we look at targets that have lagged behind, as I've indicated, but I just want to highlight that everything that we talk to today is really premised on our commitment to ensuring that we improve the quality of life of all South Africans. And this is in line with our mantra that we have put together as a department, as a portfolio, inclusive of the provinces, by the way, of social development. And that is essentially building cohesive, resilient families and communities by investing in people to reduce poverty and vulnerability, and thereby create sustainable livelihoods. I think this is fundamental. Essentially, this presentation will show you that what we are doing as social development is about people. It's about the improvement of the lives of people to the best that we can with the resources allocated to us as a department. And this is exactly what we're working towards. If you go to any province and ask what is social development about, they will read you this mantra. Even SASSA and the MDA, and they will tell you that this is what we're about. We're about building cohesive, resilient families and communities by investing in people to reduce poverty and vulnerability, and thereby creating sustainable livelihoods. And this is empowering people to create or contribute towards their own development as well. Then, of course, Honorable Chair, it's very important that I highlight that in coming up with our annual performance plan, we are very alive, and this is why we put a contextual analysis. We're very alive to the various challenges that we face around COVID-19. Those aspects still linger with us. The various challenges around economic slowdown that we have, including limited jobs. And of course, you would note, Honorable Chair, that when jobs are reduced, or when there's a lack of jobs, the SASSA lines become longer because people have to go to get some level of support, and they come to government to get some level of support. So we've always been, as a department, notwithstanding the fact that we, in terms of the Constitution, are bound to provide social protection, we have always been firm believers that we need active labor market policies in our country to get people into jobs so that we reduce the long lines that we would have at SASSA queues. And of course, we must support those who are vulnerable. That's our mandate. We will continue to do that. And I'm speaking largely with reference to the 350 grant in the main, where there are people who are not working, don't have any work, and we would have to provide some level of support to them. We will talk a little bit about that as well. I must also highlight that whilst we have certainly faced hard conditions, a lot of wins and insights were equally recorded through the new sort of normal, which forced us to think much more innovatively, more imaginatively, if you like, and for us to push to be much more agile in the execution of our mandates and in meeting the what we call the felt needs on the ground. I must say we have not been spared as a portfolio in terms of load shedding as well. Those aspects also are very much of a concern and a constraint to us, including at SASSA offices, including at our own service points as a department. We've had to invest in alternative energy as well in some cases, but the issue of load shedding has certainly affected our services much greater. But most importantly, the vulnerable have become are left in a much more difficult position, because they in a way have to make a determination of what do I do now with this money. Do I go buy solar lights or lights that would sort of keep the house afloat, candles to sort of keep the lights, the house bright or whatever in the evening, or do I need to then buy food for the kids, etc. So we are saying the issue of load shedding has really affected the social sector greatly, and this is something that we are also trying to work through. We are also are concerned around certain aspects that are again, I suppose, rearing their heads, which is the issues of gender-based violence and femicide, which we'll talk a little bit more about a little bit later. But also, we're equally concerned about the high levels of homelessness that we're beginning to see in various areas. And let me just say, this presentation, we will talk to what we call unfunded mandates, and homelessness is one of them. There is no money adjudicated to the Department of Social Development as it relates to homelessness, nothing at all. But what we've done is we've done a diagnostic that gives us a sense of what is the status quo on the ground at the moment. We are consolidating various departments, COGTA, Human Settlements, to come together to see what plan we can put together, because there is actually no legislative mandate. There is no policy that talks about support that ought to be rendered to homeless people. Another matter, which is what we call an unfunded mandate, is the issue of disaster management. There is no new money that is provided to us as social development when it comes to issues of disasters, and you'd be aware that this is something that is becoming more and more rife, particularly as it relates to floods in South Africa as a result of climate change. There is no new money adjudicated to the same for what we have in terms of the social relief of distress through SASSA in our provinces, and what we try and do in terms of donor coordination to bring some level of support. We're creating a framework as a department in this financial year, which would assist us to better respond to our work. Now, a new dynamic in our planning is the inclusion of science, and I suppose being very pedantic and specific in terms of how we craft our targets, particular approaches, and of course the voices of stakeholders. We engage with the series of stakeholders ahead of putting together this plan, be it civil society, be it in some areas business community, and other spheres of government, including the provincial and local spheres, so that we don't lose the context around the district development model in the main. And then, of course, our APP, the build-up to our APP has been characterized. You can move to the next slide. We've engaged with also our provinces, as I indicated, in our agencies, and also looked at the various stakeholders in this regard. And then the build-up to our APP has been characterized by robust engagement, as I indicated, amongst others with the various sectors of society, and civil society has really been core to the work that we do as a department. You would know that NPOs are an extension of the work that we do as social development, and we are very alive to some of the challenges that some of our provinces face, including Gauteng and KZN in the main, around in some cases slow payments or non-payments, and in some cases areas pertaining to compliance-related matters, etc. And we will talk a little bit more about that as we go on to the presentation. Of course, this APP was also subjected to rigorous assessment by the Department of Planning, Monitoring and Evaluation in the Presidency, the National Treasury, the Department of Women, Youth and Persons with Disability, but also the Auditor General of South Africa. They all stipulated that indeed we are in line. Our APP targets are in line with specific aspects mentioned by the President in the State of the Nation address in terms of the Minister's Performance Agreement, but also in terms of the FTSF priorities. Okay, and they've, as I indicated, assured us that we are not only technically sound in terms of the agreement, but we've taken into consideration what we call the SMART principles, in that they are specific, they are measurable, they are attainable. R is that they are realistic, and T is that they are timeless. Time-bound, rather, not timeless. I just wanted to sort of point those very important aspects out. I won't talk to the journey, which is what you have on the screen. I think I've spoken at length to that part. I must just indicate that through this process, I must highlight this, honorable members, and perhaps as a recommendation to the committee, it would be good, if at all possible, that when the national department is called to account to the committee, that the committee may also consider possibly inviting the provincial departments of social development to be part, because that's the cold face of where our work takes place and where things really, really happen. That's not to say that we don't want to be held accountable. We certainly are fine with that. We just would like to have the provinces to also be part of such engagement, specifically because of the concurrent functions that we have with provinces in terms of the execution of our work and our mandate as the Department of Social Development. And so, we're just making a recommendation should the committee determine that is something worth considering. I also think that how we are going to monitor that this work is done in terms of this APP, I already indicated that this APP is very much aligned to that of provinces' APPs. We scrutinize their APPs and the agencies' APPs, and we've made sure that there is a clear alignment and that we are not saying one thing and they doing another thing, etc. So our governance frameworks, including the MINMAC, as well as our what we call HSDS, where all heads of department of social development from provinces meet with national, including our agencies, will be one of the platforms in which we utilize to make sure that we monitor the implementation of our targets. Let's go to the next slide. And again, if you could just go one back. Just to indicate that if you look at the last slide, the orange, just show the orange. At that part of the orange, I think I spoke to this part already, but also the fact that we've what we decided to do is to take an independent assessment of our APP through fundraisers, and let them give us a sense of whether this APP makes sense or not, and speaks to what I call the felt needs on the ground and addresses the issues that indeed the response that we've got from that is that we are aligned. Okay, let's then go to the next slide. Look, Honorable Chair and Honorable Members, this slide essentially talks to, next one. Yeah, okay, this slide, I want to one back. I want to just spend a bit of time here because I think this is probably one of the most important slides here, including the slides that deal with money, of course. But I want to just spend a bit of time here and give you a sense, Honorable Chair. And give you a sense, Honorable Chair, of what it is that we think are fundamental issues and commitments that we are putting forward in 2023. Some of these will, of course, fall into the 7th administration, but these are the critical issues that we thought we were going to pay a lot of attention and focus on. Firstly, is creating a capable and ethical state. In other words, we are saying here that, excuse me, we are saying here that creating a capable, ethical, and developmental portfolio. In other words, once we have all of these great plans that we've put forward, are we fit for purpose? Do we have the right capacity and the capability to be able to deliver on all of this work that we have put forward? And I think that that's an important aspect that we must, not just at the national level, but also at the provincial level. Do we have the right people, capable staff to be able to deliver on this? And I think as a department, we've certainly made sure that we are moving towards that end to make sure that we are both capable and able to deliver on this. We have the right people, we employ the right people in the organization. We have the right kind of culture that drives performance-driven organizations like the DSD, and we have put systems in place. So I always like to talk about people, systems, and processes. Those are important aspects that we need to make sure are in place, and we've started working on those so that we're able to deliver. It's pointless having all the wonderful plans and we are not able to have the necessary means to be able to deliver on those plans. So another important priority we are taking forward this year, Honorable Chair, you'll see in the presentation, is the basic income support for those between the ages of 18 and 59. And this is a very important piece of work because we know that, as I indicated, as jobs decline, we've got to find a way of supporting, and the current method of supporting people is through the SRD, Social Relief for Distress 350 grant. And what we're trying to do here essentially is to have a policy that will support people between the ages of 18 and 59. We've already put out some policy proposals on our end. Internally, we've engaged with the relevant stakeholders, including academia, financiers, the National Treasury, etc. And we are going to be this year putting forward what we propose as policy amendments. But most importantly, everybody asked the question, where will the money come from? And we've got proposals to that effect as well. The next question that people ask is, so how are you going to roll this out? We've got proposals to that effect as well. We may think about rolling out between ages of 18 and 35 first, and then later the other ages, until we get to 59, etc. But we have a series of proposals that we've put together, and at this point in time, we have not concluded on those. These are all still proposals we received from various places. The issue of gender-based violence, I spoke about it. Our focus this year is going to be ensuring that every single district in this country has a shelter. Currently, there are 5 districts without shelters, and we are going to make sure that we have shelters in those districts. Every province must have a one-stop Khuseleka Center. We've got 3 provinces at the moment, and we're working towards another 3 this year, and hopefully another 3 in the next year. And these are important shelters, but importantly, our task here is also to provide psychosocial support in line with the National Strategic Plan on Gender-Based Violence and Femicide. And again, employment of social service professions. I must make the point that the conditions which we created the NDP many years ago has shifted quite drastically. We now have high levels of unemployment. We have deep poverty. We have levels of inequality which are still very, very wide apart and really not good. And again, we are saying that we need to employ more social workers. Our view is that if you employ more social workers, you actually deal with the issue at the core, which deals with social behavioral change aspects, as opposed to dealing with issues after the fact, and we want to try and address those issues. So we put a bid in through to the Department of the Treasury to assist us in terms of getting support for funding for social workers to address the rising levels of social ills. We all know that substance abuse and alcohol abuse are rising. If it's not Enyobeni, it's another challenge that we're facing, different provinces, etc. And the point is, the issue of social behavioral change becomes a problem. We're exploring various options. One of the options is to check whether we could potentially look at raising the age of alcohol, of drinking, of access to alcohol from 18 to 21. And those are discussions that are underway at the moment. Of course, we know that there are aspects of legislation that must also be changed, like the Liquor Amendment Bill, which has, again, requires a series of amendments to be done in order for us to address really the issues of substance abuse and alcohol abuse. Especially, we tend to focus a lot on substance abuse, but the issue of alcohol abuse is becoming more and more rife and more problematic to our society. Disaster management, I've spoken to that at length. Youth and gender empowerment, again, here we're talking around how do we turn people into entrepreneurs? How do we get people to start fending for themselves, create sustainable livelihood? So we're focusing a program on social entrepreneurship, but more importantly, developing skills for the economy. And of course, let me just say this, because sometimes we have a misconception that the Department of Social Development is purely about grants. We're not about grants only. We actually also, in line with the Economic Reconstruction and Recovery Plan, we actually do contribute quite significantly to job creation as well. In fact, if you look at the EPWP program, the social sector, which is inclusive of education and inclusive of health, is the highest sector is the sector that employs most people through EPWP. And then again, of course, through our various programs that we have across the country. Care and protection of children, the elderly, and persons with disabilities. This is taking precedence in our work as well, particularly around child abuse and neglect, and that of the elderly as well. And then social compacting. This is very important around how we work with civil society to ensure, as an extension, as I indicated, of the work that we do, to ensure that we maximize not only on the resources that civil society or even private sector may have, but also tapping into the technical expertise that we have. Let's go to the next slide quickly. Try and move a bit faster. Where are we here? Okay, the status of the NTSF targets against executive performance agreements. Here we're essentially just saying that, of course, the minister's performance agreement comprises of about 41 targets, and around 35 of which are within the DSD APP. One is in the APP of the NDA, and 5 are within SASSA's APP. Of course, there are high levels of alignment, as I indicated, of targets in terms of the National Annual Strategic Plan, which is a 1-year sort of pull out of the MTSF, the 5-year MTSF program. And of course, we are responsible for priority 4 as the Department of Social Development, which is consolidating the social wage and service delivery and ensuring basic services. And the Department of Social Development, together with the Department of Labor, is responsible for this piece of work. And this is what we must fast track and present to Cabinet in this year. Some of these are already sitting with Cabinet and are waiting for the meetings to take place. I'm not going to go into the detail of these, I think, but these are important aspects linked to the previous slide that I had. Let's go to the next slide. Here, honorable members, we are just highlighting the number of targets in our APP and the number of course, and then how they align to the minister's EPA. I'm sorry that we didn't put the acronyms in full. We should have. So I'll just explain that EPA is the minister's executive performance agreement, and we see that those are the 41 I spoke about earlier. NASP is the National Annual Strategic Plan, which is a one-year sort of set aside of the medium-term strategic framework. And of course, as I indicated earlier, we have a number of targets that are linked to the economic recovery and reconstruction plan. But most importantly, the budget recommendation review of the portfolio committee, we made sure that the targets that are aligned to the guidance that comes from the portfolio committee. This slide essentially, Honorable Chair, talks to the classification of our targets as a department. You would see that the bulk of our work as a Department of Social Development centers around policy development and research, including legislation. That's what we do more than anything else. And then, of course, compliance, monitoring and evaluation, and compliance. Monitoring and evaluation essentially forms parts overall, but compliance is an important piece of work that we do as well. Capacity building, we have to do this in line with the legislation that we put forward. And again, this year, you'll see a number of these aspects around capacity building. Of course, systems development and making sure that we have systems that work and that cut across government, provinces and other departments as a whole. Let me give Thabani this slide to then start talking to, and then we will then split the presentation.
Thank you so much, Honorable Chair, and thanks, Acting DG, and the all the honorable members. I will then be moving in terms of how then we've crafted this presentation is to give confidence to the portfolio committee members in terms of how then the distribution within our APP. DG at the beginning did indicate that with this APP, we are basically concluding the work of the sixth administration. So it's more about consolidating. So clearly that means a larger proportion of our targets should be targets that have been there and that concludes what has been the commitments made by this sixth administration. So that's why we'll find that there will be a larger proportion of them. However, some of them have already been met. Some of them are at the stage whereby they might no longer need to be in the annual performance plan, but you can put them in the operational plan. So here in this slide, it might read as if it's discontinued, not discontinued because it's just that they are no longer there, but they've been in the previous APPs, and because of various reasons. In Program 1, the regulations on the Children's Amendment Bill, this is now, we have a committee report, this is now in front of our portfolio committee for that to be finalized. There are some of these bills to be seen here. One of them is on the social development bill, which is, this way cannot continue because it hinges more and it depends on the conclusion of the work on the white paper, which we're still going to report on once we move to the other elements. And then the regulations on the Other Persons Amendment Bill, for them to be approved, they also depend on the finalization of the Other Persons Amendment Bill approved by Parliament. But all this, there's been substantial progress that has been recorded to date. It's just that when we sat down and considered if this needs to be put within the APP, and it's not about abdicating the work that is there, it doesn't mean that it will not be done. It's just that they're discontinued for them being in the APP, but they're still part of our commitments. On Program 3, one of the targets as well has been on the appeals, which you need to process within 30 days. And this has been the reason because there's been an increased access to the right to appeal. It's part of the administrative justice. And this has been achieved through the implementation of the amendments of the social assistance regulatory framework in the previous financial year. And this has been able to allow all those that are the appellants to be able to lodge their appeals within the independent tribunal. And so the indicator as a result accordingly has been moved to the operational plan. But however, the department will continue to provide progress reports upon request at the project level. On Program 5, we have achieved the target on the implementation of the Integrated Schools Act, plan to cap teenage pregnancy. There is a target that, as a result, we have on teenage pregnancy. Part of it is about the evaluation that you are doing, and that work has really moved. And we have on the National Drug Master Plan has been moved to the Operation Plan, as well as on the white paper. On program 5 is regarding the youth in terms of participating. This has been moved to the operation plan, and the target on the NPO mentorship model has been achieved, and the target on the APO payment system has also been implemented, and is now the system is already being rolled out. So this then, Honorable Chair and members, indicates what I was saying, that some of these targets is because they've been achieved, some of them have been moved to a different level in terms of the plan. However, once we are concluding and consolidating, because of different pressures and the context we find ourselves in, we had to think about introducing new targets. And so there are 5 targets that are new in this APP that have been introduced. DG, I think DG did take you through that. In the current financial year, in this APP, we are having 61 targets. So we define that have increased. While some have been discontinued, to use that term loosely, but we've introduced new ones. One of them is about us submitting the monitoring and evaluation framework for the Social Service Professionals Act. For approval, this needs to be submitted for approval. Another commitment that we're making is about development of a national strategy on aging. You saw that we removed one target, which was previously, which I took you through, which was related to the issues relating to the white paper, and now we have then added a new one. Thirdly, we have also committing ourselves to update and incorporate public comments in the policy. There is a policy that we have developed on the services for persons with disabilities, and is now going for public comments, and it's being gazetted. The versions have been printed. We've got English and Zulu, because Zulu being one of the principal languages after English. So we are ready we have planned to have 16 consultative sessions throughout the provinces, and we are working very well with our counterparts. Honorable members and Chair, you'll remember we did the space of NPO. The country is now, as one of the reasons of the grey listing, has been our ability as a country to manage all these things about terror funding and so forth. So as a department, we have then taken upon ourselves to say, let's have this particular commitment and make it as a target within our APP, that will then come up with a sector risk assessment report regarding the issues of the final money laundering and terror financing, because as a DSD, we are the custodian of the NPO Act. So the registration and the capacity of NPOs relates to us as a Department of Social Development. Now, we remain steadfast in terms of the target. So as you could see, of the 61 targets that we have, 56 of these targets, honorable members, are targets that are continuing. So it means we're a department that is consistent. DG did demonstrate in that slide where we were able to demonstrate the extent to which our targets are aligned and linked to the MTSF, the Military Performance Agreement, and so forth, because we need to be aligned to them. That's where we are taking cue from. This is about concluding the work of the 5th administration. So I will not go to details, but there are some of the indicators that we've been reporting on in the previous financial years when we provide our quarterly as well as annual performance report, and some of these are there. Program 1 deals with support functions, where we are dealing with issues such as the entity of entity governance and oversight framework, so that we are able to manage better our entities in this regard, I'm talking about SASSA as well as the NDA. We also continue to implement the so-called donor management strategy. We had come before this committee 3 years ago to say we will be developing over 3 years an electronic M&E system. We'll continue to do that. This has been piloted in the 3 provinces of Gauteng, KwaZulu-Natal, as well as Eastern Cape successfully, and we are ready now, as we are making this commitment, to start rolling it out in one province. We have concluded the work that we want to conclude the work on the development of a social welfare index, which begins that will assist us in terms of being able to measure the impact that we are making in terms of being able to have some key measurements so that we are able to look at and so forth. Under finance, so that we remain having a clean audit as well, we also aspire and continue to obtain an unqualified audit opinion. One of the issues, we still continue to have that responsibility of leading the outcome number 4, DG able to tell it, to talk about. So development and implementation of the National Integrated Social Protection Information System remains one of our key priorities, and we continue to do that. I won't go so much into detail, but others relate to the legislations. There are legislations that when I've spoken earlier in terms of those that are discontinuing, that we have not necessarily deprioritized, but we have moved them from here to other areas. But then we remain with these 3 ones, which is about submission of the SASSA amendment bill to cabinet for approval, so that we are able to address the bill to parliament. We'll also be submitting the victim support services bill to parliament for processing, and also will be submitting the NDA amendment bill to cabinet for approval, so that we are able to solicit public comments on program 2. It's a straightforward one, is for us to continue that SASSA is able to access the monies that are allocated to us, so that they're able to pay all the eligible grant recipients. So this is the money that is allocated, which is 253 billion that is allocated to SASSA through us by National Treasury. And on program 4, in program 3, it deals with various policies. And these are the work that has started in the previous 2 or 3 financial years, and is what we want to conclude. Important one is number 3 on the draft policy on the income support. The president has given us an instruction during his SONA that as a department we need to find a permanent solution or alternatives in terms of provision of income support to the 18 to 59-year-olds, hence the work that you are doing regarding the basic income support. And others, as I've said, but the colleagues, when they come through their program, they'll be able to give details towards that. Program 4, there's about 20 targets that they'll continue to implement, and some of them are programs that have been there in the previous financial year or financial years, which we need to do. They deal with issues as we have DG had seen and been able to demonstrate that the larger proportion of our work, if you combine it, as a demonstration of the continued interface that we have between ourselves and our provincial counterparts, resonates mainly this work, which is about policy development and research as well as capacity building. And those that you will find them between program 3, program 4, and program 5. In the main, it's program 4, which is welfare services. So you will see it in terms of how do you respond to issues of through social behavioral change program that we have, how do we provide capacity and respond to issues of anti-gangsterism in our quest and fight with issues of substance abuse, and also on issues related to gender-based violence, as we are still responsible for pillar number 4 of the national plan, national strategic plan. And these are some of the issues, and I won't go to give much detail, but this also reflects some of the work that we do with our other partners in terms of your G2G work that we are doing with them. Other key international development partners, so that we are able to increase our presence as well in some of these particular areas. Program 5 deals with issues, and one of the targets is also contained in the minister's performance agreement is about us coming up with a report where she tackled the state of the people, where not only for us to wait until the Minister of Finance gives about the budget, but we want to bring the context in terms of what is the state of our people, so that we are able to contextualize all of our monies that will be allocated. We continue to commit ourselves in terms of through our EPWP on job creation, which is one of the areas in which as PSD we are making that contribution towards employment and economic growth. And so through the we are leaders in terms of the social aspect of the as part of the public works program. And there's lots of work that we'll be doing relating to issues of youth, sexual and reproductive health through our the work that we are doing in terms of implementation of the population policy in this regard. So these are some of the areas. And I think I will move then. So I did indicate that this then constitutes about 56 targets that we are continuing to have. Maybe so you can assist me this as Jen to move to the next slide. Okay, thanks. Now we want the state now where we want to provide the detail exactly what else is contained in these the commitments, and I'm sure through the DG it is when then the relevant managers will be able to present their aspects of the work without going much into detail. But under program one, maybe I can just highlight there are two areas I did indicate earlier on. These are continued, is relating to entity oversight, where we want to continue implement the entity governance and oversight framework, which is the framework that we have developed in the previous financial years, and it's been approved. And this is what we want to continue, because it then facilitates our engagement with these entities that we have, SAS and NDA. And there's been some of the issues previously that even the professional committee members were raising in terms of our capacity and ability to manage, in particular issues relating to SASSA, because of the obvious reasons relating to that particular area. But P as well, it's been important for us as department, and this has been largely heightened by the extent when the country was going through COVID and so forth. As government, it was clear that we cannot do and fight these fights alone and win these battles. So it's been important as well to begin to strengthen our ability to work with various stakeholders and donors. There was a lot of work that's intervention that came as a result of those particular partnerships. So we'll continue then to implement our stakeholder and donor management strategy that we have developed as a department. I did indicate that as also we started the development of an electronic M&A system, which has been piloted in the previous financial year, the 3 provinces, and we know exactly how it's working. All the provinces are excited. They want to see it being implemented, because it will go not just at national, but it go to even at a district level. And it's part of our endeavors at this department to digitize the work that we are doing. We've been a sector that has been largely manual in terms of some of the things are still paper-based and so forth. So we want to move now towards automation of some of our services, as well as the reporting, and strengthen our ability to provide oversight, because it's what the Constitution is expecting us to do in terms of providing oversight over the provinces and be able, especially, to report on service difference. So we are working towards that. I did indicate on the development of the social welfare index. If I always make an example to say, if you go to a Department of Health, for them it's easy to measure in terms of the impact that they're able to make and so forth, because there are specific indicators that they have. One of them is about under 5 mortality. If the mortality, under 5 mortality, it tells you about the well-being of children and how the country is doing. And international, that you'll find even in the Human Development Index of the UN and so forth. So this is the work that we're trying to do, to say, as a department, to what extent do we have one particular composite measure that will begin to tell and articulate the extent of which we are making the impact in terms of our service. I did indicate on finance as part of governance, improve governance and efficiency in our system. We want to continue having obtaining a qualified audit opinion. I will then hand over now through the acting DG to Mr. Ndaba, who will take us through our IT and human capital management, which has got a very important element because it breaks down the issues relating to the employment of social workers, which is one of the key issues that our members and the community in general in government always ask about. Thank you, Honorable Chair. I'll hand over to Mr. Ndaba to take us through the human capital management as well as IT. Thank you.
Yeah, just before Ndaba comes in, welcome the Minister to the meeting. And good morning. You may continue.
Good morning, Chairperson. Thank you very much. I'm just connecting in between. I will try to be earlier on. I thought the meeting was starting at 9:30, and we have a state visit that I'm part of, but I will be connecting in between as far as possible. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Good morning, Chairperson. Good morning, honorable members and Minister, as well as colleagues. The next issue deals with information management systems and technology. So the output here is to implement National Integrated Social Protection Information System. And we want to do so by this financial year, which is 2023-2024. Essentially, what we want to do here is to create an integrated information exchange platform that facilitates real-time information sharing between the social cluster departments. Now, in order to realize this, or to realize NISPIS, there are certain key priorities. One of them is a NISPIS platform or a digital information exchange, which we want to do this year. The second one is to establish a social cluster single person identifier and verification, and again, we'll do this year. And the third one is to integrate a social cluster case management system in respect of identified KPIs, and there are quite a number of them that we've identified. And we also want to establish a KPI reporting dashboard in respect of the identified systems. And then lastly, we want to develop a business intelligence transversal database for social service cluster in respect of the identified KPIs. In other words, what we are saying here is that ultimately we want systems of government to talk to each other, but we are going to take this incrementally. We're not going to deal with all of them simultaneously because that would be too much to handle. So we'll deal with the social cluster services in the beginning, and thereafter we'll be able to deal with the rest. So the whole idea here is that we want to have a single view of the beneficiary of all our services, and we must be able to track that beneficiary by simply touching a button, and we are able to tell whether the person is benefiting from grants, etc., and quite a number of other services like NSFAS. The next one is human capital management. And in this instance, we want an approved, our output here is to have an approved government-wide strategy for the employment of social service professional. And our indicator, as I said, is government-wide strategy for the employment of social service professionals approved. Now, we want this strategy to be submitted to Cabinet for approval this financial year. DG earlier indicated that the number of social ills have increased, and it became necessary for us to look at a strategy that is going to deal with some of the social ills. And this must be a coordinated effort between our department and the rest of the social cluster departments. The next slide then is actually looking at how we are going to roll out the strategy and where we are at the moment. So we're looking at the current workforce employed by government departments. To date, since the NDP made a pronouncement that we should employ 55,000 social service professionals, we have in our system 22,168 social service professionals that are employed by the sector departments. Of these, DSD is employing, or the DSD sector is employing 18,948 social service professionals. Department of Basic Education is employing 934 social service professionals. DCS, which is Correctional Service, is employing 1,865. The SAPS is employing 283 social service professionals, and Department of Defense employs 138 social service professionals. We've also contracted on a short-term basis 3,388 social service professionals in the period ending 31 March 2022 via or through the presidential stimulus package. There is also an additional pool of social service professionals in the NPOs, the CSOs, as well as the private sector organizations that is helping to address or rather respond to the social ills to society. And of course, we don't have the figures for such here. And then, of course, in order for us to employ this cohort of social service professionals, we will need money. So the total number that we need to employ between now and the end between now and 2030 is 31,744 social service professionals. And for this, we'll require 9 billion rands. And this we've done through putting a bid with National Treasury. We are quite advanced in terms of this bidding process. Now, but in order for this not to be heavy on the fiscus, we've decided to implement this employment process in a phased manner. So in year one, we are looking at 5,290 social service professionals, and that would go for the second year right up to the sixth year. And the total of that is going to be 31,744 social service professionals. So for each year, we require about 1.6 billion in order to employ social service professionals. And so we think that put in this way, it makes it possible for National Treasury to fund, as we are quite mindful of the fiscal position of the state, and that is why we do not want 9 billion rands at a go. Now, if we look at what is going to happen in provinces, then of course we have been interacting with various provinces, and we looked at how many social service professionals they would require. So in the Eastern Cape, they require about 1,180, which is 23% of the total number of social service professionals we require. And then Free State, 288, which is 6%. Gauteng, 865, which is 17%. Northwest, 235, which is 2%. Mpumalanga, 541, which is 8%. 802 in KwaZulu-Natal, which is 16%. Limpopo, 601, which is 12%. And 389 in Northern Cape, which is 8%. And again, 389 in Western Cape. Again, that constitutes 8% of the social service professionals. On the extreme right, as you will see, Chairperson and members, we are reflecting the amounts that would require for each province in order to employ those social service professionals. Now, the next issue relates to the legal services, some of the bills that Thabane spoke to. The first one, we've prioritized 3 bills for this financial year. There are quite a number of them, but we looked at both our capacity as a sector as well as capacity of Parliament to process some of the bills, and we took a view that it would not be proper to have too many bills processed this financial year for a variety of reasons. Firstly, it's capacity, but also it's a short year. So there are 3 bills that have been prioritized. The one is the SASSA Amendment Act, and this bill, we want to submit a draft SASSA Amendment Bill to Cabinet for approval to introduce, in order to introduce the bill to Parliament. The second one, of course, is the Victim Support Service Bill. Now, we want to submit the Victim Support Service Bill to Cabinet for approval to introduce to Parliament. And lastly, we want an NTA Amendment Bill Act, and this bill we want to submit to Cabinet for approval to solicit public comments. Thank you very much, Chairperson.
Thanks. We'll go to program 2 now. Brenda, sorry, Fanny. We'll talk to program 2. Brenda can add as well with this program.
Good morning, Honourable Chair and Honourable Members, Minister. So in terms of social assistance, the department still continues for this financial year to transfer money to SASSA to pay our social grants. The amount that you see there for 23-24 is 253 billion. There's additional allocations received for the continuation of the 350 SRD grant, but also for inflationary increases to the grant values that has been implemented the 1st of April, but also will be, there's small additions and inflations for 1 October. There's also been provision made for increases in the grant numbers for this financial year. Therefore, additional allocations have been received from the National Treasury for this purpose. Thank you very much, Chairperson.
Just before we go to program 3, I don't know, Brenda, if you want to say anything to this. It's essentially the transfer of money that would go from DSD to SASSA for the rollout of the plans, and maybe you can link it to the program 3.
Thanks very much, DG, and good morning, Chairperson. Good morning also to the honourable members and to Minister and my colleagues. On the social assistance program, the only thing I would want to add is only that of that 253 billion.
Just a reminder that you've got not more than 10 minutes to conclude your presentation.
All right, thanks, Chairperson. I'll be fairly quick. Just to indicate that from that 253 billion, an amount of 35.7 billion is allocated to the Social Relief of Distress Grant that is meant to provide income to an estimated 8.3 million beneficiaries. And I'll then move to the program 3, Severe, if you will move for me. The other policy work on program 3, Chairperson, I will not go into a lot of detail because I imagine that it has been read. But to say that the first 2 policies are really about trying to deepen the impact of the social grants on poverty and to ensure that we are reaping a much bigger benefit for that amount of money that is being provided. Firstly, by ensuring that for children, as we provide income to them, we also make sure that they are accessing other benefits that government provides so that we'll have a much stronger anti-poverty impact on those children by linking them, for example, to access to education. Some of this work has already started in that we have linked to the Lourdes program of the Department of Basic Education to make sure that we track children who are grant beneficiaries and how they are performing in terms of their educational outcomes, and then ensure that they then access NSPAS, which is a government-provided intervention, without necessarily going through another means test. So it's that kind of trying to just link government services and making sure that all the benefits that are targeted to children are received, using the social grant as an entry point, because we have information from SASSA of all the 13 million children who are receiving social grants. The policy on maternal support for vulnerable pregnant women is about trying to ensure that you are intervening much earlier on in the lives of children to make sure that even in vitro, they are actually receiving decent nutrition from their pregnant mothers by providing income to those mothers so that they are not having to access antenatal care without other support from government. But it's also about ensuring that we track those children as soon as they are born, and then we can also begin to impact on the extent to which we reach them for the child support grant earlier rather than later. Currently, we have a problem with them only being reached after age 2. So then if they are already linked from the time that the mothers are receiving a benefit, it will be much easier for them than to immediately get into the grants program. The policy on income support has been spoken about quite a lot. The primary thing to indicate is that we have done quite a lot of research, which begins to answer the questions about feasibility, sustainability, funding sources. Now that we've got the information, we've also done some consultations from various stakeholders, including civil society members, who will now be able to consolidate all of that input into a concrete policy proposal of the how, the when, the financing, and the implementation plans for this grant. The primary thing to indicate now is that it's going to be based on the 350 grant. So the mechanisms and processes we are using for implementing the 350 grant will then be improved and built upon in order to be able to provide this permanent income support. So the 350 grant will, in a sense, morph into the permanent basic income support for that age group. The next slide. On these ones, I will not go into a lot of detail. We did some audits last year on the disability grants medical review. We want to just deepen that this year because we found that there were some issues there that needed to be identified so that SASSA can then improve how they do disability assessment. And okay, so the other ones are already straightforward. Chairperson on the social security work and the review. We're just doing a second version of that. Thank you very much.
Isabella, let's just talk to the highlights of program 4, and then Peter will close off on program 5.
Okay, thank you, Chairperson. Good morning, Minister, Chairperson, and members, and colleagues. I think for me to be able to summarize, maybe because all the targets for the program are on the page, slide number 13. Slide number 13, please, so that we can be able to summarize. But just to indicate, because I'm not going to go program per program, just to indicate that Welfare Services Branch, which is program 4, create an enabling environment for the delivery of equitable developmental social welfare services. And we do it through formulation of policies. We do it through legislation, norms, and standards, and we ensure that those legislation and policies are implemented. But we are acknowledging the fact that we are not doing it on our own. We have to know to partner with our partners, and therefore we support the implementing partners. And just to indicate that before I talk to the targets, to indicate that under program 4, we've got HIV and AIDS, which deals with prevention and care and support. We've got children's legislation, basically looking at advocacy legislation, M&E and reporting, and we've got children's services, which deals with issues of child protection, adoption, or orphans and vulnerable children, professional social services, which is very key, which deals with overarching frameworks and policies. That's where the white paper for social welfare is currently located, which is currently under review, and the framework for social welfare services, which is very critical for us because it begins to ensure that when we deal with issues, we adopt a life cycle approach, which basically saying that each and every person is very important and is going through, a lot of issues, and therefore when we intervene, we need to look at the services that are related to what that person is experiencing, and that person, at different interventions, levels of interventions. the framework for social welfare services is very clear in that, and there's older persons, which is very critical. We've got an aging population, and therefore it's very much important that we need to come up with a strategy that will ensure that, you know, we deal with issues of community-based programs, but we also deal with issues of care and support for our older persons, but also acknowledging, you know, the role that they are playing, the critical role that they are playing in the society and in the economy of our country. We've got social crime prevention and anti-substance abuse, which basically deals with victim empowerment, support, substance abuse. It's where the issues of gender-based violence and femicides are located. And then it has got also, yes, those are the social crime prevention. We have Office on the Right of the Child, which deals with the promotion of the rights of children and also encouraging child participation, and services with disability, which is currently under SOT. Those are the programs that are under, you know, under social welfare services. Now, when coming to the real targets that we have, I'm not going to talk about all the targets, but I want to look to pick up on, especially under the new targets that we have introduced. There's a target that we have introduced on the Social Service Professions Act, which is very critical. Minister is the custodian of this act, and therefore it is important that Minister provide oversight and there is continuous monitoring in terms of us ensuring that, you know, this act is being adhered to, and therefore we are developing a framework, a monitoring framework that will give us an indicators to monitor both the Department of Social Service, the Social Service Professions Act, yes, not act, so the council itself, the Social Service Professions Council, which is responsible to regulate, you know, the profession and to ensure that the image of the profession is upheld too. So this framework is going to assist us to do that. Now, coming back to the slide number 13, where we deal with quite a number of indicators. I must say that this unit is the heartbeat of the department and even of government, because it also deals with, you know, the most vulnerable, and even those that are not vulnerable, you know, are the ones that we are also taking care of, because it does not matter who you are. At some stage, you will experience some issues and you need, you know, to be supported. This is the branch that is tasked with the responsibility to do so. So when we look at the targets that have been crafted, I think I want to refer back to what Thabani has said in terms of allocation, what we are doing as the national department. The policy development is one of our key area issues, and we ensure that those policies, they make impact in the lives of our people. And if we have to ensure that, we need to make sure that we capacitate, you know, people who are implementing those policies to ensure that, you know, they are quite conversant in terms of what is it that is expected from them. So when you look at these targets, I think 7 of those targets are on capacity building. And when you look at the capacity building, it yields results because at the end of the day, we've got programs that are implemented on the ground. There's an alignment, you know, the implementers are able to implement the programs that make impact, you know, in the lives of the people. And one of the key responsibilities that is also, you know, indicated in the targets is the monitoring, so that we can ensure that, you know, whatever we have the policies that we have come up with, and whatever, you know, capacity building that we have been able, you know, to effect, you know, it's able to yield results in terms of ensuring that the implementation happens. So we are dealing with issues of GBV. You look at the targets, we've got GBV, we've got substance abuse, and we've got teenage pregnancy, which are the key issues, you know, that we are confronted with. And these are the programs, you know, that we are intensifying, you know, at national level, but also monitoring provinces in terms of the structures that we are having. We've got program structures that are at national and at a provincial level that we are monitoring, that these programs are being implemented. And we are making more emphasis on prevention. We've got programs such as RISIHA that we are implementing, you know, at local level, so that we can be able, you know, to empower and ensure that we prevent, you know, children from engaging in risk behaviors. So I will pause because of time, Chairperson. Thank you.
Thanks. Just Chair, you indulge just for 2 minutes as Peter comes in and Rogers will wrap up. Sorry about this, Chair. Thank you.
No, thanks very much, Acting DG, and greetings to the Chair and Honorable Member and the Minister. I think the Program 5 deals with the issue that relates to the cushioning the poor and the unemployed for sustainable living. You realize that social development approach has got two areas that features, which is social protection and social investment. And this social investment relates to building the capacity of people and strengthening the social network around them, identifying them, and assist them and empower them. And one of that program is the linking part. So there are 9 programs under the Program 5 that relates to social policy, special projects and innovation. You will realize that I think we might be the first department that has got what we call innovation and the special projects that we innovate in what we are doing. There is community mobilization, youth development, NPO registration and compliance monitoring, and NPO funding coordination, which is one of the key things that I will quickly talk to. And there's poverty alleviation, sustainable livelihood, and food security, and lastly, population development. Now, there are certain areas, and I think if you're looking at the previous select committee comments in relation to what we do, one of the key issues that we do is the issue of the provision of food to communities. You realize that as we continually monitoring the food, we continually going deep in poverty. Provinces are getting deeper into poverty. The access to food is decreasing mostly in the Northern Cape, Northwest, and in Mpumalanga, very drastically, where we have got over 32.6% of those population in hunger. So we provide food. We also coordinate the NPO funding. You will realize that in terms of the NPO funding, there's a lot of public outcry, but as a department, we have developed a system. We have seen an improvement in terms of the funding of the non-profit organization in provinces. Annually, the whole year, we have seen an increase from 80% funding to 98%, where all 9 provinces are funding their NPOs. We will also have seen reduction in budgets for the NPO funding in different provinces. We've seen tax reduction in areas like Northern Cape, Limpopo, but we also see that when the ECD left, we had about 8.3 billion. Now the budget has been reduced to 5.6 billion due to the departure of the ECD to Department of Basic Education. Now, with regards to the AP, I won't go through. There's one, I think I'll go to slide 10 so that the others are continuation, but there's in Program 5, we had a new addition on the anti-money laundering and the terror financing target that we have put. You will realize that as a country, we have been grey listed. One area that we contribute to is the issue of the monitoring and the supervision of non-profit organizations, especially organizations that deal with trans-province, trans-country, that we need to assess, supervise, and making sure. So we have put this target that we will be doing risk assessment so that we can identify those NPOs, and I think we will report back to you. The next one is that our system is outdated a little bit, and we will be developing an NPO electronic system just to ensure that we have seen during COVID that nobody was coming to the department, but they were doing it online. So we are bettering it so that we can go online full time, that it will also reduce the workload. And lastly, as a department, I think we have been in the population area that we will be producing reports that we are monitoring. and also will be dealing with issues of teenage pregnancy. Thank you very much.
Chair, just in terms of the financial information, I'm just going to talk about one slide, on slide number 45. We didn't receive any additional allocations for the operational budget of the department for the next financial year. You can go to the next. So the areas that we received additional funding, one is for our COE compensation. Chair, you would recall that everybody received a cost of living adjustments. Treasury granted us additional funding. These are the amounts that we received over the period. Then again, the SRD, the 35 billion that's been given to us to sustain the SRD 350 grant for another financial year. Then there was inflation increases for our normal social assistance grants for the various grant types, where there was increases in the values, numbers of the grants. Then SASSA also received an amount of 400 million additional for the administration of the 350 grant, where they will utilize it for the administrations and systems. Other than that, Chairperson, the department didn't receive any additional funding for its operations. And you can see that in the next slide for our goods and services and our various programs, especially for our line functions. You will see the increase is very limited or below inflation increases for operational budgets. Thank you very much, Chairperson.
Okay, Chair, honorable members and Minister, let me just conclude by giving a quick highlight on the budget votes, just to indicate that the department plans to deliver its budget vote 19 to the National Assembly on the 30th May 2023. The event falls within the Child Protection Week, and it's going to be taking place in Cape Town physically. As part of the build-up activities that we have so far, it's the launch of the Child Protection Week, which will be on the 28th of May 2023. We also have other, activities, for instance, the launch of the awareness campaign on substance and alcohol abuse, targeting youth in universities and TVET colleges. We also planning to maybe visit the Langa Centenary celebration to spotlight some of the development initiatives and successes in that particular community. We close the Child Protection Week in Mpumalanga, linked to the program that Isabella spoke about, RISIA. We would highlight issues of child protection and resilience. Just to speak briefly on the approach itself, the approach will be both reflective and forward-looking, starting by consolidating the past and present commitments and achievements. This will be based on the budget vote of 2022 and Minister's performance agreement for the term. We'll also outline priorities for the next financial year. The budget vote will highlight, among other things, the DSD portfolio of innovations, inclusive of SASSA and NDA, things that we've done very well or we are putting in place. We'll also lift programs that are prioritized for improvement and strengthening during the course of next year, highlight programs and services to be implemented through the cabinet-approved DDM, partnerships, and also high-impact projects at the societal level, and alignment of our plans with the SONA and the prioritized legislations. I thank you.
Thanks very much, Honorable Chair. That brings us to the end of the presentation. I'm sorry that we took about 20 minutes, a little bit longer, but that's indeed the end of the presentation. And we're happy to take questions and inputs from your good selves as the select committee.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And let me say, I think we'll with them ask questions, and then the minister will comment, and then from there there'll be answers from the department, and then we'll move on to another part of our meeting. Thank you very much for this for the presentations.
Yeah, my sincere apologies, Chair. I just wanted to indicate the minister is, she indicated she will advise when she's able to speak because she's at the state visit and they're currently moving around in that space. So as soon as an opportunity avails itself, we'll then advise the Chair accordingly. Thank you, sir.
Okay, no, then that's great. I'll say that it's interesting. It's to hear that you are playing your part also, like everybody else should, in the moving South Africa from this worrying grey listing. You know, because of this money laundering and terrorism in the world. As terrorism increases, we need to play our role also to fight terrorism and make laws that will make money laundering and corruption very difficult in this country. Honorable members, from the report, there seems to be a decline somehow in real terms, in terms of the budget in the previous financial reports, that there's going to be a decline or a decline of 20.8%, not administration, and then social welfare policy development and implementation support will drop by 4.888%, and then social policy and integrated service delivery, it will be affected. I think it will be 4.88%. What I want to know is how are you going to deal with these declines in real terms, and maybe find a way of at least briefing the committee from time to time on how you are coping with that. And then there's somewhere where you talked about payment of grants to military veterans. I want to know what is the relationship between your department and the national and the Department of Military Veterans. Are you working together or collaborating on some of these things, and what are the things that you are helping them with? Because they're supposed to have paid military veterans in December, and it never happened because of the database and all that. And from what I know, SASSA is so far the biggest database. We have the biggest database where you're paying more than 200 billion rands a year to needy citizens in this country. So there is something that I think you could do to help the Department of Military Veterans with their database and payments. If you could just, brief us a little bit on those. Honorable members, there's the input from the department. I'll take hands. I see Sandra Sigam, Slindile, Honorable Dutuli, and then there's Honorable Christians. Yeah, in that order. And those are the only hands I'm seeing on the platform. Over to you, honorable members. Oh, and there's the hand of Honorable Ntsube. Welcome, Ntsube. Yeah, Mazandona, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chairperson, and greetings to the department and everybody. Can I have my video off, Chairperson?
You're welcome.
Thank you. Chairperson, one would like to thank the department for coming and presenting what they've presented to us. And I have two questions, Chairperson. We have seen that a department is giving away a grant to those who are unemployed. And we see that as much as the people are getting a grant, but it doesn't meet standards of living. since we've seen ukuthi cost of living iphakeme kakhulu. What is the department doing as we see ukuthi there was a recommendation that was made by a commission ukuthi they need to look into kulento abantu between the age of 18 to the age of 59 who are employed. And my last question, Chairperson, I would like to find out ama-NPOs abukeka ekwazi ukusiza imphakathi njengoba nje department iwabhekelele. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Honorable Thuli. And the other, before I forget, it's the issues related to what was in the media the past week about the challenges that the post office is faced with. And we know that the post office pays, most of our grant recipients get their grants from the post office. If you could brief us on what is happening, are we heading for a crisis, or should we not worry that much that we will find a way, and what is that? Honorable Christians, over to you.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. I'm also going to leave my video off, Chairperson. My first question is also about the crisis that is brewing with regards to the renewals of the expired cards. So we've seen that many post offices have closed, and many people are standing in queues and not receiving their grants. And my question is exactly the same as the Chairperson's is, this crisis seems to be worsening. Should the country be worried? Should we be concerned that people are going to be standing in queues and not getting their grants? Post office branches are closing. There's a lack of communication in most of the smaller towns. The queues are getting longer. What is happening where post offices have closed? How are those people being serviced? There are 5.9 million beneficiaries that needs to have their cards replaced in the short term. And with winter coming, with load shedding on the cards as well, there is certainly a crisis brewing with that backlogs. There's a disability backlogs. The number of doctors that is needed for the assessments have also been decreased dramatically, which means there's a backlog in those grants as well. Now, it seems to me there's some kind of disconnect between the post office and SASSA. Can the department explain that to us? Are they not communicating with each other in terms of these grants being efficiently distributed to people? And then also recently, the Post Bank also gave a letter to, or a communication, they communicated in a letter and said that they are introducing a new method of payment, a cardless system. Now, has this cardless system that they are envisioning in implementing, has it been tested? Has it been tried? Is it not opening up another method of fraud out there? So it is a real concern that people can, that something that has not been tested thoroughly is now going to be implemented. So can the department inform us when this will be implemented? Is it on the card soon? How has it been tested and tried, etc.? So not too long ago, the post banks were going to install new ATMs, for example. I mean, in March, the department said that the post banks were going to install new ATMs. Now, suddenly, they are implementing cardless systems. So there's that disconnect there, that lack of communication. So if the department can give us a little bit of a report on that. And then my other question is with regard to the NGOs' budgets that have been slashed to such an extent that many have to close their doors. That is also of real concern. Others have said that they might need to cut their vital programs to a large extent. And it has also been mentioned that there has been no consultation with these stakeholders or the beneficiaries of this money. Then with regard to the presentation itself, I would like to know by the department what steps is being taken to address the projected underspending of the 12.2 billion by the end of the financial year. And then also with regard to the impact of the social grants on poverty alleviation and the well-being of recipients, what can the department share with us what impact that has had on this group, this vulnerable group? Has an analysis been done? And if so, can that be shared with the select committee, even if it is at a later date, whether the department has evaluated the impact of these grants on that particular groups? Then it has also been said that, with regard to the inspectorate of the social assistance, can the department provide an update on the progress made towards establishing that inspectorate for social assistance? And then the HIV and AIDS awareness also still seems to be a huge problem. Now, what actions have been taken to ensure that the delayed transfer of funds have not negatively impacted HIV and AIDS awareness and prevention initiatives? And then also, can the department provide an update on the transfer of funds to SANEC for HIV and AIDS awareness and prevention? Then also with regards to gender-based violence and substance abuse. Now, we've heard that during the presentation, it was said that the Department of Social Development not only deals with grants, but it also deals with other social ills affecting our society, which is true. However, the department never really briefs the select committee on the successes achieved in these programs like gender-based violence and substance abuse. So my question is, how is the department collaborating with other government departments and stakeholders to address this multidimensional aspects of gender-based violence and substance abuse? And what achievements and successes can the department inform the select committee of? And again, if time does not allow for it, Chairperson, I feel that it's something very important that the select committee needs to know. We need to know what successes have been achieved over this period, and if they can put that on paper to us. My last questions is with regard to the rising costs of food and the general cost of living, and how the department, what part does the department play in alleviating and addressing these challenges? And then what support is the department taking to provide sustainable and permanent support for the unemployed individuals between the ages of 18 and 59 who do not qualify for social assistance grants? One last thing that's really worrying is the war veterans, the foster care, the social relief of distress grants for 2023-2024, especially the war veterans grants. Now, in light of that decrease in funding, what is happening there? I have had numerous reports, especially in my constituency, where war veterans are finding it extremely difficult to access their grant money. How is the department making it easier for them, and why has that funding been decreased? Chairperson, I have many other questions with regard to the report, but I will be submitting it, or if we have further access to more questions, I will be asking that. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you. Honorable Nzube.
No, thank you very much, Chairperson. Let me welcome and appreciate the presentation this morning and say, Chair, that the issue of Postbank it's a call for concern. And I think we should be clarified because many of us are in the dark in relation to really what is happening. Chair, I just want to, just a few questions, Chair, that in relation to the basic income support, the report stated that it will be finalized and approved by Cabinet. So I just wanted a commitment with clarity that maybe at the end of the sixth administration that the basic income support will be adopted and approved by Cabinet. Secondly, Chair, I just want to follow up in relation to the 350 relief fund, Chair, and say that, Chair, there are people who from the ground that are saying that it takes, I think, even more than 3 months for them to access it. For an example, maybe you can have it in April, and then you are not having it in May, in June. You will access to it in August. So I just want a clarity on that one, Chair, that there's an issue of inconsistent in relation to the relief fund. Third is about the workforce, Chair. I think there is an indication that at least about 3,388 contract lapsed last year. I think it was based on the presidential stimulus package. So I just wanted to check the plans of the department in relation to that 3,388. Maybe there's a plan to intake them somewhere or do something about them. The outstanding bills, Chair, I just want to check if we'll be able to finalize them by this administration. Chair, I just want to check lastly, what measures do we have in place currently in this current financial year to safeguard the resources that are meant to the people? Because in previously we would know through the social media reports and reports from the department that there would be an act of corrupt activities in the department. So I just wanted to check in relation to that. Have we maybe put measures in place to deal with that? Lastly, Chair, it's in relation to the special projects and innovation for the current financial year. The department says that it will create 178,120 EPWP work opportunities through social sector EPWP program. So, Chair, I just want to check how will it be breakdown? Will it be per province? So, how will we manage the opportunities of 178 and 120? How will it be, Chair? Will it be like break it down per province? How will we manage it so that we reach to that number of 170? Thank you very much, Chairperson.
You're welcome, Honorable Nzuba. Honorable Minister.
Honorable Chair. Am I audible?
Yes, you are.
No, thanks very much, Honorable Chair. Thank you very much, honorable members, for the questions. What I'll do is I'll split the questions in terms of responses, and then I'll come back at the end to touch base on a few things. There was a question, the first one, Fanny will take that one around the Honorable Chair, I think also from yourself, around the funding aspects in terms of the decrease of funding. And then Brenda will come in on the question around the veterans, Brenda, and the 350 grant, and then I'll ask my colleagues at SASSA to also come in on that. I think I saw Brenton here, and the challenges as well at the post office. I'll ask Gary to talk to the HIV aspect, including the funding to SANAC, and I'll ask Caesar to talk to the GBV and substance abuse matters that were raised, Kumbula on the social workers, and then I'll come in on the bills and one or two other aspects. And Peter, I think there was a question on NPOs as well that was asked, and then Tabani on EPWP, in that order. Fanny, Brenda.
Thanks, BG. Chairperson, just in terms of the decreases from this year to next year, on slide 46, the first one, that's a decrease of 8% on the social assistance. That's because the SRD will not be, in the 24-25 financial year. That's the indication from the National Treasury. So the 35 billion additional that we have received for this year will not continue in the next financial year, and that's why there's a decrease of 8%. Then on social security policy, the decrease of 0.68%. That's because we only received the 400 million for our entity SASSA for the administration of the 350 grant, and that's the only decrease that has got an impact in terms of this decreased percentage for the 24-25 financial year. All the other programs, program 1, 3, and 4, there's about a 5% increase inflation related to the 23-24 financial year. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thanks. Brenda?
Thanks, DG. The questions, the first question, Chairperson, related to the military veterans. Let me explain. The military veterans that are referred to here are the ones who fought in the Korean War and the World War II. So the grant is a very old grant, and it's on its way out. Basically, there are no new entrants to it. It's the majority of the beneficiaries are in their 70s, and as a result, as they pass on, then the allocation also gets passed on, which also deals with the question from Honorable Christian around why is the budget declining. This is different from the Department of Military Veterans and their work. They are dealing with current veterans or veterans from the struggle years. So it's a different program altogether. There was conversation much earlier on prior to the establishment of the Department of Military Veterans that there should be some relationship with the department, but then that decision was not carried through. The decision was that the Department of Military Veterans should be a standalone department because it would not necessarily only be providing grants, but other kinds of support. So they were then separated into a different department. This one is just the one that is over time going to be ending because the beneficiaries of that grant are from that time ago, and a lot of them are dying as natural attrition, basically, as a result of that. With regards to the questions around what are we doing on the 350, what are we doing firstly with the dealing with poverty of people who are in the 18 to 59 age group, you will see when we're talking about the policy work we're doing. Currently, there's the 350 grant that is temporary. So what we're trying to do is make that into a permanent grant. But we have been having a lot of discussions and questions being posed around primarily the affordability of making it a permanent grant and also the sustainability of such a thing. And then there's been a whole lot of issues raised around whether it is not going to cause people to not want to work and so on. So the work we have been doing in the past year, part of the reason we're doing a lot of the research was firstly to answer the question about affordability. And the work that we have done suggests that it is in fact affordable. It can be made affordable based on building on the 350 grant to not increase the value very drastically because then it would require new borrowing from the National Treasury. But also the work we have done suggests that if it's funded, if it's set at a realistic amount of money, and if we over time, we use a gradual approach to increase the value of the 350 grant, and we also over time increase the means test threshold, we will be then able to turn this into a permanent grant, that it is fiscally affordable under those circumstances. And also the money that goes into the hands of these poor people will then find its way back into the economy in the sense that they will be buying more goods and services, they will contribute to local economic activity. In addition to that, depending on the goods and services that they buy, some of the money will go back in the form of VAT because they buy things that are taxed. So whatever government allocates will not be the full extent of what it costs government. Some of it will be recouped by VAT, but also that we have developed a fairly what we think is a more realistic and achievable and fiscally sound proposal on this. And that's the proposal that we want to take to Cabinet. But we're going to start, of course, with the technical working group and so on, so that we get approval for the policy to be done. We can't confirm, Chairperson, that it will be definitely approved by Cabinet. We want to submit it for approval. But until such time that we can get agreement and support primarily from Cabinet around the financing of it, that is the key challenge, is just the financing of it and whether government is willing to put in, at least at a minimum, around the sort of numbers we allocate is around 50 billion. And you can see that the current budget we've got is at 35 billion. So that's the negotiation and the discussion that needs to happen. But we think that the systems and the mechanisms are in place if we just build on the 350 grant. The other thing that is important to take note of is even if there is agreement, once there's agreement in Cabinet, we still have to write the legislation because the current Social Assistance Act does not make provision for income support for this age group. So we also have to change the law. But I mean, that the first step is to get the policy approved, and then we'll do the legislation provision for it. And in the meantime, I say, while we are doing those policy things and getting the legislation done, it's important for the grant to not be stopped, but to continue. So that as soon as the legislation is in place, then it becomes a permanent grant. But people are already in the system, already receiving the income support. That's how we are wanting to deal with the question of poverty in the long term, and that age group that has been identified, the 19 to 59 age group. The questions around SASSA, well, the post office and the difficulties that people are having in accessing their benefits is a serious concern also to us. We've been engaging with post office and with Post Bank as our new contract team, and SASSA in terms of trying to iron out some of the problems. The details of them, I think it's better to allow the SASSA as our implementing agent to go into the detail a bit more about where we are at now. But I want to assure the members that DSD is also working with SASSA and with the Post Bank to tackle those issues and to understand them and to find alternative solutions for the people who are supposed to be accessing these services. But Brenton can unpack that a bit more. Yeah, I think those are the questions that I needed to address. I have addressed the permanent one. With regard, we see the issue of food security in Mr. Nishpala might deal with it, but the key thing is part of the challenge we are facing is that, yes, the grants that we are giving, at least the child support grant and the 350 grant, is insufficient for people to be able to buy food. The Stats research says that the minimum income that the person needs to be able to buy a decent amount of food in a month is 663. The grants that we are providing, the disability grant, the foster child grant, and the older persons grant are above that. They are above those values. So in that extent, we think we are assisting in terms of dealing with food insecurity at that level. But when it comes to children, to the extent that their grant is 500 rand, when the food poverty line is 663, is a problem to us. We have been engaging Treasury on it and say, can we increase this amount of money? However, you will be aware that what we have been able to succeed in at least is for Treasury to allocate an additional amount of money for the child support grant top up, which is an additional 250 rand, which means at least for children who are orphaned, we've been able to reach a little bit more than the food poverty line for them. It's just a question of going gradually to see how far we can push the envelope of financing to be able to meet at least that amount of grant provision for children. But then the other bit is for the 350 grant. That's why we're asking for it to be increased. We even asked this year for it to be increased, but we were not able to get the fiscal support to be able to increase it. But this is an ongoing conversation that we have in government about increasing the value of the grant so that they at least do that, give enough money for at least the food poverty line. Thanks.
Thanks, Brenda. I think just to also add to that point, before I ask Brenton, I saw him here from SASSA. I don't know if the CEO is in. It's just to also highlight the fact that we have been in constant conversation with the Treasury. In fact, at one point, we actually highlighted, as you indicated, Chair, that the real value of the 350 grant is actually reduced quite drastically. Where it used to be, what, 11 rand a day, I think it was, it's actually gone down to below 9 rand a day. And if you take a walk into a shop and try and see how much you can get with 9 rands, is very minimal. You'd be lucky to get a loaf of bread, if at all. So the point is, we've raised these issues and we are very conscious that the fiscus is quite strained indeed. But we are equally saying, in the space where we're unable to create adequate jobs, we have to find a way of supporting people and assisting people. And I think that's the key thing. We're in discussions with Treasury on this. Obviously, they didn't accept our request and our bid for the extension of the 350 grant based on the fact that they said there is no money in the fiscus. I just wanted to point that out. Can Brenton come in now on the challenges of the post office? And I must just also indicate, Chair, we have been including the issue of the cards and including the access aspects around the post office and SASSA, or Post Bank rather, and grant recipients. We've been trying to engage with the Post Bank on some of the challenges. They have given us some guidance on some areas, but we're having sort of, they share with us, we question again, we engage with them further, etc. But I'd like Brenton to come in and speak a little bit more about this. But we are in constant conversation. I just wanted to add.
Thanks, DG. Good morning, Honorable Chairperson, members of the committee. Before I go on to the post office, maybe DG, just two operational issues that was also asked. I believe the DDG covered all the issues, but just from the operations point, I think maybe just also worth mentioning that SASSA has had a few engagements with the Department of Military Vets. They have asked us a while ago, as the DDG mentioned, that if we could provide them with assistance in terms of administrating their benefits. As a social security institution, we obviously are very keen if they are willing to do that with us. However, that remains, as the lead department, they will inform us and we'd be willing to work with them as and when they are ready. But they also then, as DSD provides the structure, they would also provide the structure and the way those benefits get administered. Then on the SRD, one of the questions the members asked is around the consistency of the SRD, and this is a very common question. We get it quite a lot from our clients as well. And I think it's important that, and it's important that we get this message out. So the thing with the current SRD, the COVID SRD, the way it's structured is that it's assessed on a monthly basis, which means we check people's incomes into their bank accounts and their e-wallets and any transfers that are made to them on a monthly basis. So it is very possible that someone can qualify for the grant in July, but then in August they get some money and then they don't qualify for the grant. And then in October, maybe they don't get any money, or they get some money, but it's less than the threshold of 624 rands, and then they qualify again. So that is the reason why people will get the grant in some months. Remember, these are working age people, so they are active. They're not like the elderly, for example, who are retired and out of the labor market. So these are active people. They are now and then engaging in something. They are in the informal sector, maybe making some money on the side or getting some support from someone. So when we pick that up, then obviously that particular month they don't get the grant, but when they are, as the grant is called social relief of distress, so when they are in distress and they've just had no money coming in a particular month, or money less than the threshold, which is 624 rands, then in that month again, they would be activated and they get the grant. And so that it's not inconsistency, it's just the way the system was set up and built to provide relief as and when needed by the client. In terms of the SAPO issues, this has been some. In terms of the SAPO issues, this has been something that has been plaguing us for a while now. There's been a number of challenges over the last 6 months since Postbank has taken over the contract with SAPO. I think we're all aware that SAPO is going into some form of liquidation, and that has put the entire payment system of grants at risk, and hence the contract between SASSA and SAPO was actually ceded to Postbank, which is in a much more stable financial position from October last year. But they had to then pick up this contract from SAPO with all its challenges that they've inherited from SAPO, and begin some of this. There was a lot of system weakness and so forth, which they had to start beginning to patch the systems. Being a bank themselves, they obviously have the liquidity ratios and requirements that they have to meet to be able to maintain themselves as a bank. So inheriting quite a bad banking system from SAPO, they had to begin to fix that, and that has caused quite a lot of challenges as well to our beneficiary, which we, as the DG and the DDG mentioned, we have a lot of concern around that. And then the latest challenge, which the members have raised as well, is the whole issue of card replacement. Now, there is two solutions that they've put on the table. One they'll probably communicate today or tomorrow, but hopefully still in the course of the week, which we believe would most likely be the best solution. And we believe there's a lot of positive traction with regards to that, is that there is a possibility that the expiry date on the card can be extended. They're just busy doing various tests with all the banks to make sure that that is possible. And once they confirm that, we will then issue our communication. That would bring a lot of relief to the current panic out there that people may not be getting their grants, be able to access their grants from their accounts if their cards have expired. And we're hoping to have some positive news on that aspect in either today, tomorrow, or today or tomorrow. As a backup solution, the Post Bank has also implemented, as I think it was Honorable Christians that has mentioned, the cardless banking solution, where you don't actually need the card, but you can withdraw your money using your ID number and the PIN. From a security perspective, it's as safe. The only difference is with a card, you use a card and a PIN. Here you use your ID and a PIN. It's exactly the same level of security, if not even more secure than a card and a PIN-based system. The solution has been, I won't say it has been used. We've used it with our SRD clients, and it's been used for over a year now. So it's not an untested or a new solution in that sense. It's just a slight modification of the SRD solution, but it has been in place and been used for over a year now in that system. And this is also one of the ways, as we do see, the challenges with the post offices, that I don't think from our side, SASSA side, there's much we can do around the closures of post offices. And I think Postbank being heavily reliant on the post office as well as their branch network, they also now have to begin to think out of the box in terms of if the post offices were not to be available any longer, what alternative solutions can be put in place for our clients? And the cardless solution is one of them. As the Honourable Member mentioned, the ATM, rolling out ATM infrastructure is also one. However, because it's infrastructure, it's a much more difficult thing to do than to implement a cardless solution. So that will take a bit of time to do. There's also a whole range of other issues like putting in contracts with merchants, especially local merchants, who we often call spaza shops in communities. But again, look, that it requires a lot more negotiation and security and so forth. So that takes a little bit more time to roll out as well. But those are some of the solutions that the Post Bank is looking at, and we closely engage with them as well to try and limit the impact of the SAPO branch closures on our business. Thanks, DG. Thanks, Honourable Chair.
Thanks, Brenton. So I want Brenda just to quickly come back on the impacts of grants issue, and then we'll move from Brenda, I think we said, to Thabani, and then Kere, Caesar, then Kubula.
Thanks very much, DG. I had actually forgotten to respond to Honourable Christian's question, which is one thing that is actually really important to respond to. We don't do very well in sort of blowing our own horn about the impact that we are having. And this was an opportunity I missed. So we've done quite a lot of research in terms of
you have less than 5 minutes to round up your questions.
Okay, let me say, instead of going into the details of the funding, they have very positive impacts on poverty. The grants reduce poverty, they also reduce inequality, they enable people to participate in the economy. But I think what we will do is just share all of the different research studies we did. We'll send them through for honourable members to consider, so that they can also use this information, hopefully, to motivate for us to get more funding into the grants, because they have been shown to be the most effective anti-poverty element of the country's poverty strategy. Thanks, Chairperson.
Thanks. Thank you very much, Brenda. Let's try and move quickly. Peter, NPOs. Just quickly on NPOs, Isabella, Angere, and Caesar. I don't know if Caesar's here. Peter, you go first.
Thank you very much, DG. And there are questions that have been asked in terms of and only one question on the issue of the budget for NPOs. The budget for NPOs over years has not been decreasing as such, even when there's a budget cut. The only substantial increase that we can see is from 2022-23, based on some of the NPOs moved, the ECD moved to basic education. Therefore, it took a lot of budget. But what we are handling now is the issue of how where they reduce the budget But I think as a national department, we are dealing with this matter, and this matter will be addressed to ensure that NPOs get their budget. We must also know that I think as the services are, poverty is increasing, the needs for services also increasing, and the number of NPOs in different areas also are increasing. Therefore, the budget won't be enough for what we're supposed to do. But we are dealing with the matter in broad areas so that we can also talk to our donors and other businesses to fund the special priority programs, which include GBV, substance abuse, and others. But all in all, we are on top of that. We have, as a department, as part of coordination, develop a system that will be able to monitor the NPO funding that we are dealing with. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Peter. Gary? Gary?
Yes, thank you, Acting DG, and thank you for the questions. The issue of SANAC, the transfer to SANAC has been processed, and the department is working with SANAC at the moment to ensure that future transfers are handled in the manner in which it aligns with financial prescripts. So they have requested a extended time to prepare their reports so that they comply to the financial requests from the department. And so the matter is being handled in a proper way. We will try and make sure that the transfers are released much earlier based on their cooperation in terms of submission of reports and other items. In terms of provinces and the transfers related to HIV and AIDS programs, the issue has been attended to. We've had recently engagement with provinces led by the Deputy Minister, where some of these issues were raised in the request to ensure that continued support to NPOs through transfers is managed. Thank you, DG.
Thanks very much, Gary. Okay, let's go to Kumbula very quickly.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. Just on the 3,388 social service professionals contract that expired on the 31st of March 2022. We had actually secured funding to deal with a pool of social service professionals who were unemployed, who had been knocking at our doors. Unfortunately, we were not given sufficient funding to employ them on a full-time basis, so we had to contract them for a period. So we contracted them in 2020, 2021, and then we continued with the contracting process in 2022, and it had to come to an end at that point. Now, of course, there are some provinces that took advantage of the fact that they already had some of the social workers in their institutions, and they contracted them to their own budgets. But in the long term, as I said, we've actually put up a bid with National Treasury, which is looking at a long-term employment for social service professionals, as I had outlined in this, and that process is well underway. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Gary, please mute. Gary, please mute. Just, Chair, there was a question around whether we're able to disaggregate any data from EPWP, and the answer is yes, in terms of job creation. We can disaggregate in terms of gender, youth, province, as well as persons with disabilities, etc. So that information is available. We are able to do that. I want to confirm, Honorable Chair, that there has been significant successes, especially from the DSD, as it relates to issues of gender-based violence and substance abuse. Well, substance abuse, yes, we rely largely on provinces to assist us, but much more can be done in that space. But from a GBV perspective, we'd be very happy to share some information with honorable members in this regard, but also we'd be happy to come and present specifically on those areas in terms of what we've done. Of course, this is aligned to Pillar 4 of the National Strategic Plan on Gender-Based Violence. And as I indicated earlier, our key measures, etc. But significant progress that is being recorded, including working with SAPS around victim-friendly rooms, etc., and a range of other very important stuff that we're doing within the space. Just lastly, Honorable Chair, somebody asked a question about the inspectorate. We are in progress on this. We're hoping to appoint the executive director and the staff within their office in the course of this year. That's on course, and we'll be making sure that that comes into place as soon as possible. The issue around which bills are being prioritized, there are 3 bills, Honorable Chair. The one is the fundraising bill, which is currently with this good committee, and also the older persons bill. And then, of course, the Children's Amendment Bill, which is a committee bill, which will be processed this year. So those are the 3 bills that are being prioritized, with the fundraising amendment bill currently with the NCOP Select Committee. The Older Persons Bill is being consulted now with the National Assembly, and then, of course, the new process of the committee bill in terms of the Children's Amendment Bill will also ensue in this financial year. Honorable Chair, I hope that we've done justice to respond to all questions. If not, we're happy to provide written responses to those that we may have missed or may not have included. But thank you very much for this opportunity.
Thank you very much. You always give us extra information whenever we ask questions, and thank you very much. Some of the questions will be, if there are to be further questions, we will do them in writing, and we can get the written responses to some of those questions that will, yeah. And if there are none, then it's okay. Let me take this up. The minister is not in the meeting. I saw she was kicked out of the meeting, or she left. But yeah, as she's not in the meeting, I'll say did you want to say some parting words, or do you think this is enough?
I think it's enough, Honorable Chair. We're happy with the inputs provided and the guidance provided by your good selves. Thank you.
No, thank you. Thank you very much. You will be excused so that the committee can remain to deal with their APP. Thank you very much. Your part of the meeting is finished.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair.
All right, bye. Thank you. Honorable members, we'll start our meeting in a minute or two once the members have left. Should we start with the minutes, the last minute? Let's start with the minutes first, then we can go into our. That's the minutes of the 18th, last week's meeting. Minutes, they're still fresh in our minds. There we go. Are there matters that members want to raise? Was any seconder?
It's Ndongeni, Chair.
Ndongeni seconds. Thank you very much. That'll be the only minutes. Let's move to the APP of the committee. I want to check with Marcel and the team. Did you receive any inputs from the members?
Good afternoon again, Chairperson. I didn't receive any input from any of the members, Chair. Thank you.
On the plan of the committee?
No, Chair, I did not receive any inputs.
Did you receive anything, Marcel? No, Tabile?
Chairperson, can you hear me?
No, Molo.
Chairperson, can you hear me? Chairperson, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, Chair, sorry, Chair, I'm currently in load shedding, but
I've asked
I
a
should be
question.
fine.
Did you receive anything from the members?
I did not receive anything, Chairperson.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, honour members, that's the report. Our APP as the committee. Am I still audible?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes, Chair.
Members, are we still in the meeting?
Yes, Chairperson, we are in a meeting and we can hear you.
Yes, Chairperson, we are here.
Yeah, there we go.
I think the
Just
chairperson
scroll
has
it
a
again.
problem. Where is the chairperson?
Yeah, honour members, that's the plan. Let me see, what's it? I really cannot hear you, so I don't know what's up. Is there any comment? Like we had a whole week to comment on this and we did not receive any comments or additions. Any mover for adoption of this report, of this APP?
Ndongeni moves for the adoption of the report of the APP.
Ndongeni, Honorable Ndongeni.
Move the adoption of the report of
I
APP.
cannot hear anything.
Yo.
I guess you are able to hear me, but I can't hear you at all.
I hear you, Chair, loud and clear. Chair,
Can somebody
someone
take
at
over
least
this
call the
meeting?
chairperson to inform him that we all can hear him? He's the only one who can't hear us.
Hello?
Inatsika yakhe ivukweli demon.
And he's
Ifoni
torturing us
yakhe.
with his ear. Ubeka indlebe man, sibona indlebe yakhe. Yo.
We kaloku ivukweli demon
Okay, if
ifoni
you
yakhe.
Marcel says you can hear me, but I can't hear you. Is there any move for adoption of this?
Andisazi ke ngoku noba ngubharha noba ngubani naye wenze yakhe.
Chair the meeting. I'm suggesting that you take over the meeting, because even if he asks for a mover, he can't hear anyone moving, which you did. You get me? So I'm saying probably chair the meeting until you close it, and chair Magathule ngo.
Chair. Okay, members, it seems as Uche have got a problem. Ne? Only one thing we can do is to adopt the report, because we have given this report for a week. So everybody says, so I adopted the report. So any seconder? Sorry,
I second, Honorable
To be a
Dongeni.
second, Chair.
Okay. Anything now except the report? It means nothing, or even myself, I'm out of the meeting.
We can hear you,
We can
Honorable
hear
Dongeni.
you, Ms. Nongeni. The report has been adopted.
Okay, thank you. Is there anything, myself?
Chairperson, that was the end of our meeting. Thank you.
Oh, okay. Thank you, colleagues and the staff. The meeting is adjourned.
Thank you, Honorable Ndongeni.
Thank you,
Thank
Honorable
you. Next time I'll take over.
Bye.
You
Next time
won't
I'll
do
take
that.
over.
You won't, Baka. You not.
Because the connection here is poor.
Yeah, I agree with
Connection
Honorable.
ANC is poor.
I agree with you.
Yes, but now we're back as it nyamezela ubusithi because asekuvanga noba ngubani ukuthi makathi take over kodwa sakunyamezela ngoku wena soyakhalaza uLuthuli ke uhlale lahleka every day manje sekuyakhalaza siyipurpose khoyo kanti
All I'm saying is that ANC is losing connection. ANC is losing connection.
Hey! Okay,
I agree.
okay.
I agree.
We are going to take over this thing. We are going to take over this thing.
No, no one.
Yo!
We are going to put chairperson asimfa kodwa siyamva kasiva yena. That's a sign.
Imagine. No. The best solution, we must go to parliament, guys. That's the best solution.
That's fine. But still there we will take over.
Luthuli, we must go to parliament. Everybody, our meetings must be physical. I don't know about you because we want to sit in Durban.
All I'm saying is that nobody happy. You've lost connection. Bye.
We can't physically. We got to lose connection physically. Hi, Nibo.
You still lose connection.
You've lost it already.
Never. You must never.
Bye-bye.
Okay,
bye-bye.
I still love you. See you tomorrow, guys.
Bye. Where you seeing us tomorrow?
Bye.
Ewe kaloku meeting nathi ka-education intoni ngoluthuli wo uhambe wabuya ungazi noba kubethwa
No, I thought maybe you're gonna see us physical. Now I'm asking where.
hayi ntombi angeke ndithi
Bye,
namhlanje
Dongeni. I love you, my sister.
more than next week is going to be physical.
Sure.
Bye.
Bye. Bye-bye.